Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Man, we have seen a lot of shit come across YouTube and the news about so many different things, but I want to touch on a couple things in particular. And I want to start with Ian Carroll. So he basically had his free speech Friday yesterday, which was phenomenal, and showed about web and everything. And he actually played some clips from the interview with Leslie Wexner, or not interview, deposition or some shit. And obviously, I'm sure everybody probably knows about the hot mic moment, but Ian actually went into a couple other areas, which is just so repulsive and disgusting on who these people are. So I kind of wanted to touch on that. And then I wanted to touch on Tucker Carlson and him going over to Israel to interview Mike Huckabee, and just how weird. And if that shit would have popped off before I was going, no way in hell I'd have got on no plane and was going anywhere near that place. But Tucker is a goat. He did it. And a lot of people might have different opinions on Tucker, but Tucker is one of us, and then some. So I wanted to touch base on some of that as well. But I want to start with Ian. And we'll start with, well, the hot mic moment. And in this, you're going to barely hear when the lawyer whispers in his ear, but it's up as high as it can go. It is definitely audible. You can hear it with headphones on. So if you don't hear it, then I suggest put some headphones on. But we're going to get started with that.
Even in like a kitchen, you literally inventory like how much cheese is still in the container and how much mayo is still in the jar and how many pickles are still in the fucking pickle container. Someone has to run around and fucking mark all of that all the time. And his excuse is that he never occurred to him to inventory all the shit that his business had and was selling and stuff like that.
So people could be walking out with forks and spoons. Gee, that's a good idea. We ought to have an inventory.
We're supposed to believe that this guy built one of the biggest retail brands. Let's rewind. This Jewish dude built one of the biggest retail brands in the world and didn't count how many things he owned. Right. You're trying to tell me that this Jewish dude didn't count how many fucking things he owned, but somehow was successful enough that he built one of the biggest retail businesses in the world. It's like, oh my gosh, we should have an inventory. I never thought of that, despite running a multi-billion-dollar fucking retail business.
There was I hired a lady to be like the house manager who had run the U.S. Embassy in Rome, and she said, yeah, I know how to do this. And I said, well, why don't we keep inventories of stuff? And she said, well, yeah, I could do that. So she did that as kind of a puny example, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done.
Look at the look on his lawyer's face.
The fucking lawyer just like, hey, guys, I'm just going to take one moment here. I'm just going to take 1 second here to tell him I'm going to fucking kill him.
Answer the question.
Okay.
A discrete question on a different topic. We know that at one point you owned a property in Palm Beach. It was a large oceanfront estate. We understand that you sold that estate to a guy named Abe Gossman, and that later Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein got into a bidding war over that property. Do you have any knowledge of, or did you have any?
Whole different story. We're not going to get into that story. Okay, so that's the hot mic moment, plus its context. Make of it what you will. But
as disgusting as that man and everybody associated with him, to have Ian break this down with his wittiness and his humor, it makes it tolerable. When I watched Ian last night, I was dying laughing the whole time. So here's another clip.
enough. Thank you very much. So just to come back to where we were. Leslie Wexner buys Abercrombie & Fitch, which also owns Hollister. He puts in his own personal CEO, Mike Jeffries, who runs the company from then on, refocuses the company on the teen audience, runs a sex trafficking ring where he is allegedly, very well documented, trafficking those young male models all across the world over to Europe, doing all sorts of absolutely horrendous things to them. You can read about them in the charging documents. Trafficking them to other wealthy clientele, although they tried to cover that part up. They tried to make it look like it was just for him and his couple of buddies. We can read the room. We're not retarded. We weren't born yesterday. It's just a coincidence that Leslie Wexner was running. Here, let me bring him back up. Let me bring him back up. It's just a coincidence that this hobgoblin was running two different trafficking rings out of his two prominent retail brands that both target the teen, younger, sexualized audiences. Just a coincidence. It's also just a coincidence that he chose Jeffrey Epstein to manage all of his businesses and to have power of attorney over those businesses. Where's the power of attorney documents here? Where did I put them? That's the New York Townhouse transaction. Fiduciary control. This is documentation of fiduciary control. It's been reported in many different places, and somewhere in here, right here. This is actually a JP Morgan statement that it's kind of a lot to unpack, but it has Jeffrey Epstein's accounts mixed in with a Wexner account showing his power of attorney over all these different accounts. A durable power of attorney is an important legal document. By signing this durable power of attorney, I am authorizing another person, my agent, to act for me. I acknowledge these important facts, etc. Quote, Wexner trusts Epstein so completely that he has assigned him the power of fiduciary over all of his private trusts and foundations, says a source close to Wexner. In 1992, Epstein even persuaded Wexner to put him on the board of the Wexner Foundation in place of Wexner's ailing mother, Bella Wexner, recovered and demanded to be reinstated. Epstein has said they settled by splitting the foundation in two. So, Leslie Wexner chose Jeffrey Epstein, who had no financial resume of any public knowledge. Like there was no public financial resume. He hadn't done any big trades. He hadn't managed anyone's money. He had been a derivatives trader at Bear Stearns. He'd been helping rich people avoid taxes at Bear Stearns. I mean, that's not the worst resume ever to help Leslie Wexner manage his trusts and companies and all of that. But this is one of the richest Jewish billionaires in America, running some of the biggest retail companies in America. And he doesn't just hire Epstein to do a little bit of work. He hires Epstein to run all of his shit in whatever way he wants, signing over power of attorney, which gives Jeffrey Epstein the authority to buy, sell, transfer, invest, divest, anything he wants on behalf of Leslie Wexner.
And if you have to question why, well, because they were both the little place the size of New Jersey assets.
Sumer. And by building up its roster of teenage male models. Then we learn in 2024 that Abercrombie CEO Mike Jeffries was running a male sex trafficking ring basically that entire time out of Abercrombie and Fitch. We, to be clear, these are only allegations. They were charges, but they were never tried fully in a court of law. And the reason for that is because obviously the guy was too old and he got Alzheimer's and he forgot all about it and he just wasn't fit to stand trial. So he pled insanity, Alzheimer's, and was let off.
I mean, that guy looks effing evil, if I do say so myself. So those were just a couple clips. If you haven't went and watched Ian's Free Speech Friday, I highly recommend that you do, because Ian has been so busy investigating and using web and uncovering so much. I'm surprised that he actually had time to even get on there. But it was a great show. And even though it's disgusting topics, repulsive, it's Ian delivering it. So everybody needs to be in the know anyway. And how about you just be in the know with somebody delivering it in such a great way? So I think you should go over and check out Ian's full show on Free Speech Friday from last night. And I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it. You won't be disappointed, for sure. And then I wanted to, this was mind-blowing to me, with Tucker Carlson doing this interview. But first I'm going to show you who Mike Huckabee is. So Michael Huckabee is an American politician, diplomat, and Baptist minister serving as the 29th United States Ambassador to Israel since 2025. A member of the Republican Party, he served as the 44th governor of Arkansas from 1996 to 2007 and ran for his party's presidential nomination in both 2008 and 2016. Born in 55, 70 years old. Previous offices: governor of Arkansas, lieutenant governor of Arkansas. His wife is Janet. His children, his education. He's also the ambassador of it, the little tiny place the size of New Jersey. All right, where did Tucker go? Okay, so I'm not going to play the full interview. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend. It's long, but I highly recommend that you go and watch the full interview. So I'm basically going to let you see the synopsis of the beginning, because before he even hit ground, these people were running their mouth and putting lies and bullshit out there on Tucker. It's gross. But I think Tucker is an amazing person. He fights for this country like nobody else. So this is his breakdown of what happened prior to even getting there.
We're about to play you an interview we did with U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee 2 days ago in Israel. In general, it's never worth talking about the backstory behind an interview. It's kind of not the point. It makes it about the interviewer, not the person being interviewed. For one thing. For another, it's not that interesting.
However, this is very interesting.
Most of the time. And for another, it's kind of off the record. the other person hasn't consented to you telling the story. So in general, we don't do that. Who'd want to hear that? Let the interview speak for itself. But in this case, we want to tell you just a few things about how this interview came about, because they are pretty interesting, revealing, and now weirdly relevant, apparently. So this interview with Mike Huckabee came about a couple of weeks ago on Twitter. One of our producers showed me. He said something to the effect of, "You're talking to Middle Eastern Christians, Tucker Carlson. Maybe you should talk to me. Why don't you come do an interview?" And I paused for a minute. I've thought in the past about trying to interview Mike Huckabee, whom I've known for over 30 years and worked adjacent to at Fox. And I had mixed feelings about it, mostly because it's hard, if you're me, to interview Mike Huckabee because of just the personal affect. Mike Huckabee is jovial, comes off as friendly. He's a grandfather. When annoyed, I can be nasty in interviews. And so it takes a lot of self-control to interview someone like Mike Huckabee, not because I hate him, but because it's hard to ask him tough questions and not come off as a jerk, which I often am. So, but I thought in this case, yeah, I should definitely do this for a bunch of different reasons. Mainly, the United States is moving toward a big war, a real war with Iran, a regime change war, the biggest war we've had since the invasion of Iraq in the spring of 2003. And Israel is driving that. We are doing this at the behest, at the demand of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So it seems like now is the time for more Americans to understand the dynamic between the U.S. and Israel and to call attention to that. And for another, Huckabee's behavior in the last year in Jerusalem as the ambassador has been very, very striking. He famously had a meeting with the most damaging spy in American history. And why did he do that? He hadn't been asked by anybody up until 2 days ago, why did you do that? So I wanted to be able to ask him that. And so we accepted, and then began the usual negotiations about when and where the interview would take place. And we were constrained because we weren't expecting this. We wanted to do it quickly, but we had tons of travel.
First, I would like to say, if you follow Tucker and anything to do with the Charlie Kirk case, he's clearly willing to go put himself in harm's way, because we know definitively Bibi Netanyahu was not happy about Charlie Kirk letting Tucker get up on the Student Action Summit and speaking, which is what started the whole nightmare of Charlie Kirk's life. So it's kind of unreal that Tucker is good shit. Tucker is a very good, genuine person, but I don't know. It's a bit brave, if you ask me.
So we threw them a date, them being the American embassy. We can do it on this date, and they were very accommodating. And then the question became, well, where do we do it? And maybe a Christian holy site. We said, we've got to get in and out really quick, got to be back to do a bunch of other interviews, but we've got this time frame. They said, well, why don't you do it at the U.S. Embassy? Or maybe we said that. Great, U.S. Embassy. So the U.S. Embassy is about an hour, 55 minutes from the big airport in Israel, Ben Gurion. So we said, okay, what about security? Now, at this time, the Israeli government, the prime minister included, were attacking me in this show. Netanyahu suggested I was a Nazi, for example. And so we thought, how about security? Obviously. Not because the Israeli government necessarily would do something bad, because there are a lot of people in Israel who think, because they've been told, that I'm an anti-Semite or a Nazi or want to kill Jews. It's kind of crazy overstatement. All untrue, obviously, but it would be good to have security. And I should say, having done interviews on 6 out of 7 continents over 35 years, I'm not very security conscious at all. Never really feel uncomfortable, but this seemed like a prudent thing to do. So we were told by the embassy spokesman, no, we're not going to provide security. And so we said, okay, I guess we'll get private security. But could we get someone from the embassy to ride in the car with us from the airport to the interview? And we were told, no. Could we get what they call a control officer, just an American, with us, in an official capacity as an embassy employee with us? no, quote, for legal reasons, we can't do that. So I thought, well, that's very strange. And then they said, but instead, we're turning you over to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, MFA, and they're going to arrange everything in Israel. Well, this was within 24 hours of the Deputy Foreign Minister, Sharon Haskell, releasing a video calling me an anti-Semite and an enemy of Israel. This was the person who the embassy was telling us was going to handle all of our travel.
Yay.
So it was at this point that I just called. I called the spokesman for the U.S. Embassy in Israel, and I said, okay, I'm an American citizen responding to an invitation from the American ambassador to Israel. And by the way, I'm the son of a U.S. ambassador, so I have some sense, I'm not an expert, obviously, but I have some sense of how this works. And I think that the U.S. ambassador has discretion to send somebody from his office to the airport to accompany someone in. I think that's right. And if it's not right, tell me what law you're talking about, what legal reason you're talking about that would prevent that. And now you're sending me over to a government official who's been calling me a Nazi? That's the person in charge of getting us to the embassy? Like, what is going on here? And the embassy spokesman, who's totally nice, said, well, this was the decision of someone called David Brownstein. He's the DCM, the number 2 guy in the embassy. And I said, well, put him on a text exchange. Like, what is going on here? And so Brownstein got on and didn't answer the question, but basically said, well, okay, let's just do the interview at the airport in the diplomatic reception area at the airport. Okay, I said, we're going to be flying in from Europe, and we had to be in and out really quickly. So at great expense, we chartered a plane, which I never do because I'm cheap. But we did. And so then I said to them, okay, I want to send you the flight information, tail number, flight number, route, and I want you to pass that on to the Israeli military just so, they don't mistake us for an Iranian drone or something. I mean, not to be paranoid, but again, this is probably the most violent country in the world, Israel. Is there a country in the world where a higher percentage of the population has held a gun or shot someone? I mean, I don't know the answer, but this is a country famously waging a 7-front war with all of its neighbors, so this is also the country that bombed the USS Liberty, knowing, we know this from NSA intercepts, that it was an American ship. So don't, just send the military our flight information and, we can all just sort of know it's on the record and we can all calm down a little bit. No, they said. The U.S. Embassy said, no, this is, your flight is not a matter of concern to the Israeli military.
Okay, so at this point, we're past the point of me even considering. At this point, hell no. No. They were purposely making this difficult and intimidating and trying to make him uncomfortable. Bottom line.
I said, okay, now you're making me uncomfortable. Isn't the airspace of Israel the purview of the Israeli military? Aren't they in charge of maintaining the integrity of their airspace? When you fly over the country of Israel or any country, its military keeps track of you because that's their job. So why wouldn't you send our flight information to the Israeli military? You're making me nervous. I sent this exchange. I took a screenshot of it and sent it to a bunch of people, including in the U.S. government, because I'm not a paranoid person and I'm not a jumpy person. I said, is this weird behavior? Yeah, it's really weird behavior. All of them said that. So I got pretty aggressive and just said, look, you got to do this. Okay. And they, to their credit, got back to us and said, yes, we will do that. But I just thought that was completely bizarre and menacing, by the way. Now, at the same time, and I think this is relevant, certainly it goes to motive, I was attempting to set up a meeting, as I have been for the past 3 months, with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who I've dealt with a lot in the past, and who denounced me as a Nazi in public, a member of the woke Reich. And why was I trying to do that? Not an interview. I knew he wouldn't sit for an interview, but I wanted just to meet with him in person. One, to show that I'm willing to go to Israel. I don't hate Israel as a country. But two, just to say directly to him, this is bad. This should be de-escalated. This kind of rhetoric doesn't help anybody. Calling me specifically, a Nazi and an anti-Semite when you know that I'm not. By the way, if I was, I would just admit it. I've said many times I think anti-Semitism is immoral. It's against my religion, just as hating any group on the basis of their bloodline is immoral. So the new year is here.
And that's just the fact about him. And he is brutally honest. However, I think he's a little bit touched in the head for going over there and actually doing this damn interview. No way. No way. They were trying to make him as uncomfortable as humanly possible. And he went anyways. Thankfully, he came back to tell about it. Oh, good Lord.
Help anybody, calling me specifically a Nazi and an anti-Semite when you know that I'm not. By the way, if I was, I would just admit it. I've said many times I think anti-Semitism is immoral. It's against my religion, just as hating any group on the basis of their bloodline is immoral. So the new this one, and moreover, I would like you to ask your friend Benjamin Netanyahu to meet with me. And we had this sort of long back and forth, and it was, no, you cannot speak at the National Conservatism Conference because you're an anti-Semite. No, I'm not, I said. Yes, you are, you said. And I said, well, I really would like to speak to Bibi to kind of de-escalate this. And he said, it would not be in his political interest to meet with you. It's almost verbatim what he said. Therefore, no. So then I realized, you're dealing with people who are unreasonable, who are inflexible, who are in fact fanatical. And then add to that, of course, that my tax dollars are paying them. It was all pretty distressing. So that was the backdrop behind our very brief and highly intense trip to Israel. So we show up on Wednesday, fly in from Europe, again at great expense, and show up at the diplomatic terminal at Ben Gurion Airport where this interview is going to take place, which is bizarre in itself. A filthy building. The windows are so dirty in the terminal you can't see out them barely. There's like exposed drywall. The whole thing is depressing and grim. There's litter outside. Like, what is this? This is the diplomatic terminal in Israel. I thought that was very strange. Having been in a lot of diplomatic terminals, I've never seen a rattier one. We go in and Huckabee's there. And of course, he's totally friendly, as he always is. Very, very friendly guy and cheerful. And we sort of chat. And the whole place is filled with these guys in T-shirts, thuggish looking guys in T-shirts who are some kind of security. So we do the interview. You're about to watch it. It's very long, at 2.5 hours-ish, and I try my hardest to be friendly. I think I kind of succeeded. You can judge for yourself. But I really got the sense, and again, you can decide as you watch it, that Huckabee was not able to answer any of the questions, but also not really in charge. You really got the feeling of a guy sort of trying his best to repeat the talking points, but very constrained, like unable to say certain things, not because those things might harm the interests of the U.S. government. He was happy to attack, for example, the U.S. military and say they're more brutal than the Israeli military. Okay. But unwilling to say certain things because they might reflect poorly on the Israeli government. And you sort of thinking about this for a second, you're like, wait, you're the U.S. ambassador. You're our representative to a foreign country. Why is your red line criticism of that country? Shouldn't you be representing us? And it was very obvious he was representing the Israelis. Obvious. And again, you can judge for yourself. But anyway, so we do this interview. It was cordial. And at the end, we're set to fly out. We have a time. We have to get out. And the plane is sitting right outside. And we're ready to go. And for some reason, the Israelis still have our passports. There are 5 of us there. And 4 of us are flying out on this plane. One's flying out commercial with our gear. So my business partner and I were standing there. We've never left the airport, never went anywhere. But our 2 producers have spent the night before in Tel Aviv. And they're called into rooms and given the 3rd degree. Now, keep in mind, they're about to get on a plane and leave. In fact, we're late. We have to get out of there. We have a slot to get out. And security, whoever this is, won't let them go. So I don't really know what's going on at this point. I'm like, where are our guys? We got to get out of here. So one of them comes out and he says, that was the weirdest experience in my life. They asked me questions about the interview. Who did you speak to? Keep in mind, this was like 8 feet from where we did the interview. Well, the U.S. Ambassador, Mike Huckabee, what did you talk about? Why did you ask those questions? Was it a hostile interview? And of course, everything in the diplomatic terminal is taped. Everything in Israel is taped. It's a police state. It's a surveillance state, obviously. You go to Israel, they put software on your phone. Everybody knows this. Okay, they're constantly spying on you more than probably any other country. And so they know the answers to these questions. But they're asking my producer, like, where do you work? How many people work there? Do you go to the office? Where is the office? What are their names? They're doing like an intel op and humiliation exercise on my producer. This isn't security. We're leaving right now. And they're holding his passport. The interrogator is holding the passport in his hand as he's asking these questions. So he's telling me this, and I said, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. Huckabee's gone by this point. Plane later. Twice they told me that. Just leave your guy behind. No, I don't think so. So I was enraged by this. Get on the plane. We get a text from a reporter who somehow knew that this had happened. I have no idea how. I had no interest in publicizing it, actually. There was, a long trail that showed that the U.S. Embassy had been coordinating against us in a public relations battle before we even got there. They were leaking that we demanded to do it at the airport because we were afraid to go into Israel. We're cowards. Okay, we're cowards. Right. And so I just said to the reporter by text, they pulled my guys into a room, interrogating them. This is outrageous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The interesting thing is I never heard from Huckabee or anybody to this moment from the U.S. Embassy about what security did to my producers. They didn't ask us. And instead, Huckabee went out and called me a liar. So it raises, again, the question, who exactly is Huckabee working for? We're American citizens in a foreign country. He's our ambassador. He represents our country. We pay his salary, but he's taking the side of the foreign government without even calling to say, hey, what happened to you at the airport? Did you get hassled? Did your guys get hassled? No.
That is a real problem. That is a real serious problem.
Immediately repeats their lies without even consulting us. So, what are we looking at here? We're looking at the reality, which is if you're an American in Israel, you can be certain that your government will take the side of the Israeli government and not your side. And really, is that so different from the experience of Americans in the United States?
No.
Can you be sure that your government will take your side over the Israeli government? No, of course not. They will always take the Israeli government's side over yours. And that's the core problem. Even if you support a war with Iran, I think the most pressing issue for Americans is that we kill the Ayatollah or whatever. You still have a fair expectation that your government, because it is yours, you pay for it, it exists to serve you, and for no other reason, you have an expectation that your government will take your side against a foreign government. But the daily lived reality, the obvious truth, visible to every single American, is that's the opposite of reality. In fact, if you criticize Israel in your country, your government will work to censor you. If there's a standoff between you and Bibi, you know whose side your government's going to take, Bibi's side.
Every time.
That is not sustainable. That is too humiliating. It's too clearly an inversion of the natural order. Your government exists for you, not for a foreign government. But that's not how we live. in this country or in Israel. So that's what we learned. And one last thing, the Israelis apparently went, probably with the help of Mike Huckabee, went to the surveillance tape inside the diplomatic terminal and pulled some clip. And they're, of course, getting all their little bots online to promote it, of me with my arm around somebody to show that actually I'm lying about what happened. That person was our driver who drove us from the plane to the terminal, a short drive. Very nice guy, good guy, Israeli guy. And right when we arrived, and he said, "Could I get a picture?" Of course. He's a nice man. So I just put my arm around him, took a picture. That's what that is. That was before the interview. It was before our producers were hassled by the thugs and asked ridiculous questions. It was before any of this happened. So that's just another installment of the propaganda war. Thought we'd give you the backstory on that.
So I'm not going to play this this entire interview, but I mean, just the opening there, pre-interview, the shit that went down just to get to the interview is quite unreal. Like, I know from a Christian standpoint, me and my husband, we always said that one day when the kids were grown, we wanted to go visit over there. You wouldn't get me over there for no amount of money, for no reason whatsoever at this point. No way in hell. Sorry. Wouldn't do it. And it's quite frankly, it's scary to me that Tucker was willing to, knowing all this beforehand and knowing everything that Bibi has said, what the outcome for Charlie Kirk was, to get on a plane and go there. No way in hell. But much respect to him, because he is an amazing reporter. He truly is.
Thank you very much for having us, for inviting me. I was grateful
This is them at the airport.
to be invited.
Well, thank you.
I was grateful because I don't like all the name calling. I've engaged in some of it. I want to apologize for that. In general, I don't think people should be going immediately to motive, calling each other Nazis or anti-Semites. I said I hate the Christian Zionists. I lost control of myself. Of course I don't. I've apologized for that. I have problems with my anger, and so I just want to apologize to you since you are a Christian Zionist.
You and I have known each other for over 30 years.
Over 30 years. That is totally true.
Back when you were in Little Rock. So
yes, I was at the newspaper.
It's why I wanted us to have a conversation, talk to each other and not about each other. And I appreciate very much your coming here to.
Of course, and I'm only
Liar. He didn't even make it back home before that guy was releasing bullshit narratives. Like, Mike Huckabee, you work for the US, not Israel. And hey, buddy, it was all interviewed and recorded. Yeah.
staying a couple hours, unfortunately, because I kind of shoehorned this in, but I hope that I will be back soon. And I hope that I can come back soon because I actually like, despite what you may hear, I actually like the country. I've been here a lot. And there are a lot of things I love about it. And I want to talk to people in it for like a week.
Good.
And get a better sense of it. So I want to ask you, everyone I've talked to in preparation for this has said the same thing. Jonathan Pollard,
yeah.
I'm just going to throw the name to you and have you explain.
No, I'm glad you asked. You know,
of course.
Interestingly, there's been a lot of things about it.
Please keep watching. I got to run pee break. And this will keep you plenty entertained, I promise.
You're the first person who has asked me about it, which I find amazing. So I'm glad you did.
Really?
Yeah, the very first
Good.
person.
Well, it's better to hear it.
Sure. I met Jonathan Pollard 2 times. Once I was making a speech in Jerusalem. This has been a few years ago. His wife was still alive at the time, and he was there. And someone introduced me to him and his wife. I said hello to them. That was it. Hi. Nice to meet Esther, his wife, and that was it. I went and made my speech and I left. Later, his wife passed away here in Israel, and I sent him a note and just said, I'm sorry to hear about your wife. I remember meeting her at the hotel, and sorry to hear it. He then asked, could he come and see me? He wanted to come and thank me for being kind to him. He came to the embassy. I think we met for maybe 30 minutes. We had a nice, pleasant visit. The funny thing was the New York Times reported that it was a secret meeting. Tucker, if you've ever been to the U.S. Embassy, you would know there's no such thing as a secret meeting at the U.S. Embassy.
Sure.
There are cameras everywhere. You walk through Marines, you walk through security, you walk through the front office, and there's a dozen or more people that are going to check you out when you come. And before you get there, you're going to have to give us your passport information. You're going to have to be vetted and screened and all of this stuff. So the idea that it was secret was ludicrous. The whole idea is, look, Jonathan Pollard did something that was terribly wrong. He sold secrets. He shouldn't have done it. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison and spent 30, actually was, I think he was sentenced to maybe more than 30 years, but he spent 30 years in prison. Most people convicted of something similar, which was one count, I believe, would have spent 2 to 4, but he spent 30. I don't have a problem with him spending 30 because I think what he did was despicable. I'm not defending anything about what he did. But even people like the former director of the CIA, a number of other senators on the Senate Foreign Relations of the Senate Intel Committee said that he should be allowed to leave and move to Israel if he wanted to. So it, to me, was not as big a deal that I had this basically courtesy meeting. He wanted to thank me for being nice to him when his wife died. That's pretty much the story.
You advocated for his release when you ran for, I remember it, in 2011, long before he had served 30 years. And I agree with you that there are a lot of people languishing in prison, in our country and in this country, in many countries, for longer periods than they deserve. And I think it's a Christian impulse to want to see them free. But this was the greatest traitor in modern American history who sold our battle plans against the Soviet Union, our main enemy in the Cold War, to the Israeli government, which according to our Reagan CIA director, Bill Casey, then gave them to the Soviet Union. So this was the most profound betrayal of the United States in my lifetime. Why advocate for that guy's release before he serves his full sentence?
If that were the case in 2011, it would have been because I had a number of friends that suggested that he had more than served time, and he didn't want to live in the U.S. anymore. He wanted to live in Israel. And but my association with him, again, I had never met him until I met him in Jerusalem at a hotel. That was the first time I had ever encountered him.
I'm friends with 1 million bad people, or I've talked to 1 million bad
I'm
people.
sitting here with you. I mean, come on.
I mean, Jesus ain't with tax collectors. So trust me, do not judge people who are friends or know or enjoy the company of immoral people.
Tucker is a good person. Mike Huckabee, well, considering he is an American ambassador in Jerusalem, it doesn't appear that he works for the Americans. And you'll see that as this goes. And like I said, I picked and choose clips, but I highly recommend, if you haven't seen this, go watch the whole thing.
Because it's not an endorsement of their immoral behavior. Pollard is different. I think once you become U.S. ambassador, the representative of the President of the United States in the United States of America in a foreign country, and then you invite not only the most damaging betrayer in our lifetimes, but also a guy who continues to advocate for betrayal. So he gave an interview, as I know you know, in 2021 to Israeli media, in which he said, I would encourage Jewish Americans with security clearances to spy for Mossad against their own country, the United States, because, and I'm pretty much quoting him, all Jews should have dual loyalty. That's not repentance. That's not someone who feels bad about what he did. That's someone who's encouraging American Jews to betray their country. That's pretty heavy, don't you think?
Oh, I do. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think, let's remember, it was President Trump who probably facilitated his departure. And I'm certainly supportive of President Trump. I think you are. And
Pollard's not. He called him a madman after your meeting.
that's why I say Pollard is not, for me, the real issue. It was the fact that he did something that was despicable. I'm not denying that. Of course he did. And he paid dearly for it, 30 years in prison, and he should have. That's what he should have done. There's no question about
But
that.
why meet with him in the U.S. Embassy? Your colleagues said they were shocked. They said...
Who were the colleagues that said they were shocked?
Quoted on background in the New York Times. I think the
Background, of
meeting
course.
was in August. I mean, this could all be fake. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, the same New York Times said it was a secret meeting. And I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a secret meeting in the U.S. Embassy.
Do you see why the U.S. ambassador hosting a convicted betrayer of his own country who's encouraging Americans to continue to betray their country would seem shocking?
Well, I would say that it wasn't that you make it sound like I'm hosting a meeting. I simply met with him. I meet with people all the time. Some
You can
of
just
whom,
walk in without a...
no, they have to have an appointment. Of course they do.
Oh, so it is
Yeah.
hosting him then, I think.
Well, I don't know if it was hosting, but it was certainly, he was able to come to the U.S. Embassy to have a meeting at his request. I did. And frankly, I don't regret it. I met with a lot of people over the course of the time I've been here, and we'll meet with a lot more. That's it.
So if you spend the evening at my house, you are guaranteed the documents. Let me ask you.
But you bring it up. I hope you will bring it up to people at the White House. That
I'm bringing it up right now. I'm bringing it up now, and I'm asking, and I just want to say this one last time, as the U.S. ambassador to Israel, I hope that you will make a formal request to the Israeli government to send every accused sex offender in this country back to the United States to face justice. And I don't understand why that hasn't been done. I'm confused.
Well, we'll try to clear up all the confusion that we
Well,
have.
if someone's been accused of trying to molest a child, I think it's...
Then certainly, and I'll check with the Justice Department because it is a DOJ issue and it would be handled through DOJ, the U.S., to the court systems in Israel. That's how it would be handled.
But the first step is the Israeli government saying, yes, we will allow you to extradite this person back. The person is being shielded by the government. That's why the person's here. That's why he fled here, so he wouldn't have to stand trial for trying to molest a child. I want to get to as I said at the outset, I said something awful that I regret that my wife barked at me about. I lashed out at Christian Zionists and evangelicals, and I just want to say again that I'm sorry. I've always liked them because they're pro-life and they're also really nice people. So for the third time, I'm sorry that I said that. I think part of my problem was I don't understand the theology, and you are not a fake Baptist minister. You're an actual minister. You had a church for many years. You're an actual theologian. So, and I mean this with sincerity. I hear people say, those who bless Israel will be blessed. I know it's a reference to Genesis. I don't understand the connection between that concept and modern Israel and the geopolitical world. And so I'm going to stand back and ask
let's
you to
first
explain.
define, because, from my days as a debater in high school and college, one of the things I knew, you didn't start the debate till you defined the terms.
Amen.
Let's define the terms.
Thank you.
What is,
Thank you.
What is a Christian Zionist?
Okay.
What does that mean to you? What does it mean?
I don't know. It's the people who call me a Nazi for asking what Israel means. I mean, that's kind of my, I don't even know.
But here's the point. If you say a Christian Zionist is a person who has a brain virus and is guilty of heresy, that's a pretty big charge.
I know. I shouldn't have made it. I made it out of anger and ignorance.
So,
and I'm
Christian, I think we can agree, is somebody who follows Jesus Christ,
exactly.
has a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, believes in his death, burial, resurrection, has repented of one's sins, and have accepted him as one's Savior. Would that be
Exactly.
fair?
Amen.
Christian. Define that. Zionist. A Zionist simply means a person who believes that the Jewish people have a right to have a homeland where they have security and safety? Did you believe that the Jews have a right to live in Israel? Do you believe that Jews have a right to live in Israel? That would be a Zionist. That's all a Zionist is.
I
It's
have
not
a
anything-
million questions about what all of those terms mean.
Yeah.
But conceptually, I wish Israel no harm. I don't want to see. I'm
Do you
very.
want them to have a place where they can live with safety
Well,
and
let
security?
me. So I saw this.
Do you want them to have a place to live with safety and security? Mike, they're the bullies.
Recently, in an extremely telling exchange between the lieutenant governor of Texas, who I know and I've always liked, and a woman I don't know, never met, who's on the Religious Liberty Commission or something. And she said, I'm a Catholic, but I'm not a Zionist. And they had this ferocious exchange. And he kept saying, and everyone on the panel seemed to keep saying, you have to believe in Israel's right to exist. Which I've never kind of questioned, just for the record, but it did raise two questions I think are really important, and I hope you'll answer them. One is, where does that right come from?
I would say it comes from, essentially, you could say it comes from the Bible. I would say that it does. But it comes also from a long iteration of historical precedents going to the Balfour Declaration of 1917. It comes from the League of Nations 1927. It comes from the United Nations 1947,
Right.
The Declaration of Independence of the Israel State in May of 1948. They were immediately attacked. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1956. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1967 by 5 countries. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1973 in the Yom Kippur War. They won the war. The point is, does Israel have a right to exist? They also had wars in 1982 in Lebanon. They've had
I remember.
the intifadas, 2 of those. They've had
Lebanon
war
again in 06.
2014.
I was there. No, I'm very familiar with the modern history of the state.
Okay.
Pretty familiar, I think. And I've been
But a
here.
Zionist simply means somebody who believes that Israel has a right to exist. Now, the question is, do you
there
believe Israel has a right to
I
exist?
guess. I mean, I want
You
Israel
guess?
to exist. Well, no, but I want to know what that means. So, like, do other countries have a right to exist?
Well, they do exist.
Do they have a right to exist? You keep saying Israel has a right to exist, and I want to know what other countries
They
have
have a
right.
legal right because every international body in the last 100 years has said the Jewish people have a right
I
to
understand.
their
You explained
indigenous
it, but
homeland.
my question
so that's a
is,
legal right.
what
Do
other?
they have a biblical right? I would say that yes, but you may say they don't.
I don't know. I'm actually
Okay.
sincerely interested in finding out what you mean by a biblical right. But first, to the legal right, does any other country on the planet have the same right that Israel has to exist?
Well, you could say, does Jordan have a right to exist? When it was Transjordan and the Brits came and divided up the Middle East and they gave some land to Jordanians and they gave some land to the Saudis and they gave some land to various Middle Eastern countries, and it was all carved up. And the French gave Lebanon its right to exist.
So basically, he'll just go on and on and on and circle talk Tucker. He'll never get the answer he's looking for because he's just not going to get it. And he doesn't. He believes what he believes. And mind you, he works for the United States government, not Israel.
Take over Jordan. They're not trying to take over Syria. They're not trying to take over Iraq or anywhere else. But they do want to
about
protect
Lebanon?
their people. No, they're not trying to take over Lebanon.
But you're saying that as a religious man, as a Christian Zionist, you agree with a lot of religious communities here in Israel that the justification for this country is theological. It's a contract between God and his people. And I'm telling you that that contract includes a tract of land that is much larger than the current nation state.
So
the
you
current
may be
borders.
a bigger Zionist than even the Jews are that live in
I'm
Israel.
trying to understand the implications of your theology for geopolitics,
Yeah.
because you're saying that the present government of Israel has a moral right to take over what are now other people's countries.
No, I didn't say that, Tucker.
Then what are you saying?
I'm simply saying that the people who live in Israel, I think, have a right to have security, have safety, They have a right to be able to live in this land that they have a connection to for 38
I told myself, and I said a prayer that I would not get annoyed, but as someone who is, the father of daughters, when I see child molesters hiding in Israel and escaping American justice, I think I have a right to safety in my country too. So you can understand that I think most people feel they have a right to safety. I do think Israel has a right to safety, and I hope that for them, and I'm sincere, but I'm an American.
Gotta love Tucker. I mean, he does not hold his tongue. He actually is keeping his anger at bay because he's really angry about a lot of, he's very passionate about a lot of these issues, and he's trying to be as respectful as he can be. But it gets better.
So my question is very simple. I'm going to wait patiently for an answer. Does this right derive from religious affiliation or from genetics?
And I would say it's both. But I would also say that when you said the Christians were kicked out, Tucker, Christianity is growing in Israel.
Okay, but
And there is a big lie that goes out there. But no, let me finish this because I keep hearing that Christians are really not treated well in Israel. That's just simply, that's a lie.
Well, there are lots
It
of
is a
different.
lie.
There are lots of different.
There were 34,000 Christians in Israel in
It is definitely not a lie. Their own Jewish Christians over there are treated like shit. Hungry, homeless.
1948. There are 184,000 Christians here today.
And by Israel, what are you counting?
You talking about the land?
What territory are you counting?
I'm talking about
Israel proper? Or are you counting
talking about Israel
the West
proper.
Bank as well and Gaza? I mean, what do you, when you say Israel, those numbers apply to what landmass?
It would be in Israel proper.
Okay.
There are 184,000. Now, I'll tell you where Christians are not doing very well. They're not doing very well in the Muslim-controlled countries. There's almost no Christians in Qatar, for example, except those who live in the Christian ghetto, who are the
About to get straight G-checked by Tucker.
service workers.
I'm
You
sorry.
can't
Look,
pray.
I don't want to argue with you. There are many more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel.
That's not true.
What it actually is true, and I refer you to Wikipedia, Mr. Ambassador.
Wikipedia,
I refer you to the government of Qatar, the government of Israel. These are knowable facts. Like I'm
in Jordan,
by the way,
numbers are down. In Syria, the numbers are down. In
I'm
Lebanon,
just
the
saying,
numbers are down.
there
I'm just
are
telling you that
about twice as many Christians.
but they live in
hold
the
on.
enclave. They are not native Qataris.
Okay, we're mixing so many different categories
Yeah.
here. I'm just
Jewish by the connection to the Torah.
but how do we know that Bibi, specifically Bibi's ancestors, ever lived here? How do we know that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't? I mean,
Well, it's on the basis of the claim that they did that all kinds of things happen. People are displaced. There's a money flow. I mean, it's a big question. A lot hangs on this. It's not some theoretical thing like, oh, did my grandparents do this or do that? It's like, no, we have a right to be here because my ancestors were here. Okay, how do we know they were here?
I'm totally unable to process what you're trying to get at. It goes back, do Jewish people have any land on this planet that should be theirs to
I
give
feel
them?
that way about all peoples. I feel that way about Jewish peoples. I feel that way about...
Okay, then you don't mind them having
Is
this
there
little
any
sliver of land,
country, let me
right?
ask you this bluntly, is there any country that European peoples have a right to exclusively?
I think they have attained their land through conquest. I mean, let's ask
Have
ourselves.
the Britons
do
attained
the
their land through
Romans-
conquest? No, they've always been there.
The Romans, the Greeks, we've had all these
let's
civilizations.
speak. Let's speak. Well, you could certainly say that here. The Romans controlled this, as you know, and they expelled
But they
all the
don't
Jews
anymore.
from Jerusalem. Amen. I don't want them to control it.
Hope not.
I'm
Amen. He said they don't anymore. Make that clear. I love Tucker's passion.
Place.
agree.
It may be the greatest archaeological discovery in all of history because
great.
it's stunning. And they still continue to find things that date the Jewish people to this land archaeologically for 3,800 years.
We can date the British people to their land much longer, much thousands of years longer. Stonehenge is 3,000 years older than any building built by the descendants of Abram in this country. And so it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's right. I'm just wanting you to affirm that right, but it makes you uncomfortable and you won't. And I don't know why.
Because I've never honestly sat down and asked myself, are the lines around the
It's an
United
island, so we know what the
Kingdom-
lines are.
I'm saying, but are those lines, are those rooted in something other than the historical connection? Well, great, then they should have it. But
And
that's
they have a right
question.
to have it. But then you said if they can defend it, and if they can't defend it, they lose the right.
But I didn't say it was exclusive one or the other. I think you're really going off the trail.
I just want to know if these principles apply universally or if they only apply to the people of Israel. And my answer appears to be just the people of Israel. They're the only ones with these rights, and I just reject that.
I didn't say that, but I'm saying we are talking about Israel. We're in Israel. We're talking about Christian Zionism because you've made some disparaging statements about Christian Zionists. You've apologized for them, for which I appreciate. And now we're trying to define Christian and Zionist. And it seems like we've gone way, way off
I'm
of
trying
that.
to get, as you suggested as a former debater at the outset, I'm trying to get to terms and a common understanding of what the words mean.
And the term
And I'm
Christian,
no closer to that than I was when I began.
You're not closer to the term Christian, what that means?
I think it's someone who follows Jesus. And
Okay.
that's my next question.
All
There are
right.
a lot of Christians in the West Bank, and there were a fair amount of Christians in Gaza, and some of them have been killed.
There were 5,000 in Gaza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And two different churches were hit by the IDF. Christian Hospital was hit 7 times by the IDF. And I don't understand.
They were not hit 7 times. There were different, I know. And one of the times it was a rocket that was shot by Hamas, and all the news agencies reported that the IDF shot the rocket. They
Did
said
the IDF ever hit the hospital or the churches?
They did.
Why?
Accidentally, and they apologized for it. And it was very unfortunate. But they also, you got to remember, there were times Hamas often hid caches of arms under hospitals.
Were you bothered by the fact that the IDF hit Christians?
I'm bothered that anyone got killed in Gaza, but you know why I'm bothered?
You're a Christian minister.
Because here's the
and
thing.
You can't say that the Christians are Islamic extremists.
No, but
And
I can say that
I
the
would expect
reason
you to
that
side with the Christians over the secular government of Israel.
But
you
I
don't
would
seem
look
to
at it even more broadly. I would ask you this. Why was there so much suffering and continues to be suffering in Gaza? It's because Hamas, which could have built a Singapore, built a Haiti. They have a landmass the size of Las Vegas. They built tunnels underneath that are larger than the London Underground, over 500 miles of tunnels. They didn't build it to move people from one hospital to the other, one marketplace to the other, but to hide terrorists, to hide weaponry. And on October the 7th, they went over there and they massacred 1,200 civilians, massacred, mutilated, humiliated them.
You're never going to get me to defend Hamas. Sorry.
Please don't.
I'm not going to.
But
ever.
I'm telling you. And
I'm
so
appalled by it. How many civilians have been killed by the IDF in Gaza?
We don't know. You know
What's
why
your
we
guess?
don't know?
What's your guess?
Well, the only numbers we have come from this dubious entity called the Gaza Health Ministry. You know who that is?
Well, why
It's
doesn't
Hamas.
Israel have some kind of count on it?
We also know that a lot of the people who were killed were, in fact, warriors. Sadly,
How many kids were killed?
we don't know.
What's your guess?
I don't know. I'm sure it was thousands, and it's thousands too
Thousands
many.
of kids were killed.
Some of the kids who were killed had been recruited to be in the military. Kids as young as 14
they were
years
terror
old.
kids. Do you hear yourself? I wonder.
I just said that there were kids as young as 14 that were recruited to be Hamas soldiers who were given arms.
How do you feel about the
horrible.
kids being killed?
I think it's horrible. You know what I also think is horrible? I think it's horrible that 1,200 people were slaughtered by
couldn't agree
people
more.
across the border,
I couldn't
and
agree more.
252 people were taken hostage. 48 of the 1,200 were Americans.
Couldn't agree more.
And then when
Are all lives equal?
When Hamas could have ended this on October the 8th and given all the hostages up. They didn't, leaving no choice.
You're never going to get me to defend Hamas.
I hope
I'm not pro-Hamas.
I hope
totally
not.
opposed to slaughtering innocents,
Yeah.
whether Hamas does it or whether the government of Israel does it in much larger numbers. And the reason I'm opposed to it is because I'm a Christian and I believe that all souls are created by God.
I do not disagree with that wholeheartedly.
But I said, how many children have been
war is
killed?
a horrible thing, period. And we don't know. We know that a lot of the numbers were reported by Hamas.
But you said you think thousands of
A lot
children
the
have been killed.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know why they got killed? Because Hamas would gather up the children and put them in the targets. Do you know what Israel does? They send page messages and they send texts to every cell phone in Gaza, and they say, we're going to hit this particular target. They drop leaflets and they announce where they're going to hit. Nobody does that.
I would like to see proof of that, sir.
The U.S. doesn't do that. Israel does that in order to prevent.
are you
Let me
saying
finish
that-
this. They do this in order to prevent civilian casualties. What Hamas does, they say, oh, this is the target. And by gunpoint, they push people into those various places. And then when people get killed, they say, look, Israel just slaughtered these people, even though it was Hamas who moved them into harm's way, knowing that it was going to put them in a place of danger and death and destruction. And they do that because they don't care. You say you care about life. I care about life.
It's interesting
Tucker,
that
they don't care about life.
I'm not saying that
They
Hamas does. You're never going to get me to defend Hamas. I'm
Good.
I'm anti-Hamas.
You've said that 3 times, and I believe it.
Your dig at the United States is very revealing
Why is it revealing?
because your priorities are very clear.
No.
Yes, they are.
No,
yes,
no,
they
no.
are. And as an American, permit me a moment
Okay.
of outrage because I said many civilians have been killed.
Yeah.
And you said right in the middle of your elaborate defense of the IDF's killing of civilians, including children, you said they do a better job than the United States does. That's my country and my government.
It's
which
my
I
country.
consider.
What flag am I wearing here?
Well, I'm asking.
Sir, just because you're wearing the American flag doesn't make you for Americans.
Why is it
What flag
so-
am I wearing?
Well, that's, of course, my flag as well.
And it's
a
my
US
flag. It's who I serve.
So why the dig at the United States?
Do you serve the Americans? I don't think so. In my opinion, he serves Israel.
In the
It's
middle,
not a dig
it
at
was.
them. No. You've totally misrepresented
What did
that.
you mean by that?
I did not take a dig at the U.S. What I'm saying
So
is,
the IDF is more humane than the U.S.
I'm saying
military. Do you
no,
believe
I'm
that?
not. I'm just saying that Israel takes steps that we don't take, and no other country that I'm aware of takes to try to prevent. Because no matter what Israel does, they're going to get accused of genocide.
That may be right, and I'm
just telling you that they.
But then let me ask you on that question.
Okay.
That's such a politically loaded.
But I
term.
resent the idea that you think that I'm not loyal to the U.S.
Well, you
or that I
just said.
somehow.
Look, I'm not saying you're not loyal. I'm merely noting what you just said, which
I'm saying you're not loyal, sir. You're loyal to Israel.
was that the IDF takes greater pains than the U.S. Our military does to spare civilian lives. And I guess my question is, when was the last time the U.S. military killed this many civilians? Do you know?
Well, it could have been Nagasaki, Hiroshima, could have been Iraq, Afghanistan.
So that was nuclear. Yes.
We don't know the full number.
And I think most Christians would say all of those things were atrocities because innocents were killed in large numbers, and we don't believe in that. And so that's not really a defense, is it?
War is a horrible thing, Tucker, and there are people who end up, unfortunately, being killed that shouldn't have been. I would tell you that I wish that none of those people in Gaza had been killed after October the 8th. Well, I say not none of them. I'm glad Mohammed Sinwar was killed. I'm glad that some of those warriors, the people who masterminded and carried out the atrocities of October 7th,
14-year-old Hamas operatives, how do you feel about their deaths?
if they participated in that, then God help them. I'm telling you,
What does
Tucker,
that mean, God
I
help
don't
them?
know
Are
that
you
they
happy
were
that-
14 years. No, but I'm telling you that when someone commits the acts of atrocity and then they hold hostages, if these were your children being held hostage in Gaza, What would you do to get them out?
I wouldn't want to kill 14-year-olds. I'll tell you that.
Let me ask you something. Would you do whatever it took to get your kids back if they were being tortured, raped, starved,
I would
and
not
beaten?
kill children, period.
Well, I'm just telling you.
And I
that
would
you
never make
do-
excuses for killing
but you
children
wouldn't-
either.
And I'm not talking about targeting children. I'm talking
You
about.
told me that 14-year-olds deserve to die because they were working for Hamas.
I'm telling
And
you.
my question is, can you hear yourself?
I do hear myself.
So do you think a 14-year-old child has agency? Do you think that he deserves to die because he's being used by adults? Isn't his death a crushing
If
tragedy?
he's holding a gun and he's pointing it at someone who's trying to save a hostage, and the only way to save that hostage, I'm telling you, war is a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing, and a lot of innocent
I think I'm the
people
one
die,
who thinks war is a
and
horrible thing.
No. I think what you don't
I'm
understand.
trying to.
Facts. This guy is a circle talking, nonsensical, pro-Israel everything. I would watch the rest of this and then go anybody that's friends with anybody that has been in the military, Valhalla, Black Scout, survival, they will tell you that at all cost they prevented and did not have the free-for-all to just kill civilians and innocent people. Just the fact. So I'll play this for a few seconds longer and then you guys can go watch this thing in its entirety. It's worth every minute of it.
To explain how horrible it is, and you're saying that the 14-year-old deserved to die. We don't execute 14-year-olds.
You're putting
in our
words in
country.
my mouth that I didn't.
I don't know
put.
what you're saying.
I
You
never
said-
said deserve to die.
Okay.
I say there are people who die
too.
that is unfortunate.
Okay.
But I'm saying that you are not giving Israel credit for having done everything they possibly could to a level that, quite frankly, in urban warfare, there has never been a war
I mean
that
to
has been
criticize
documented.
Israel, but it's a foreign country, and I would much rather criticize a foreign country than my own.
Feel free to do that. They can
But
handle
you
it.
pivoted against our country
No,
by
I
saying
didn't
Israel's
pivot
done a
against
better
it.
job than our military
No,
has.
I simply gave you the illustration and I helped you understand that Israel goes to lengths that no other country, including ours, goes to in the middle of an urban war. And yet Israel ended up with fewer civilian deaths in an urban war than any urban war of record.
You said
In my opinion, why the fuck is he over there as the ambassador for the US? None of us can go over to Israel and count on that man to keep us safe. Nobody. Not a one of us. He needs to get the hell out of there and they need to put somebody in there that is going to protect Americans when they go over there. That's his job. He's not doing that. What he's doing is he's protecting them. He's a circle talker. It's so repulsive. It's disgusting. But that's all I'm going to show of that video. And again, like I said, I highly recommend it. Oh, sorry. Wrong one. I highly recommend that if you haven't already seen it, you go over to Tucker's page and check out the full video. It's one of his greatest interviews, I believe. And I think of all times that he had the balls to go over to Israel, now it was pretty brave. And obviously he just got circle talked and whatever, but I'm glad that he made it back safe. And let's just keep exposing these people. Let's just keep exposing it. That's all we can do. Because at this point, it looks like the little place the size of New Jersey is way more important than any other place in this world. Not just us, but any other place in this world. What they want, they get. And if you don't give it to them, they will take it. No. Sorry. And people like Tucker going and doing these hard interviews and putting his life at risk is, speaking up. And we got to speak up. That's what we got to do, guys. So I'm going to end with this. I hope everybody has a good night. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Please, it helps in the algorithm. And I'm slowly getting there. I hope everybody has a good rest of your Saturday. Tomorrow I'm heading back to Indiana, so day trip. I'll probably be on tomorrow night, providing that everything goes smooth on the trip back home, or back to Indiana. This is home. So with that, I hope everybody sleeps good. And if you haven't seen these, go check them out. Go check out Ian's Free Speech Friday and this interview with Tucker. And please like, subscribe, share, turn on notifications. And again, if there's anything that you want me to follow or check into or investigate or cover, drop it in the comments. I don't mind doing it. I do plan on getting back to Indiana, and I've had a couple people email me from Utah that's willing to collaborate, but I'm a little sketchy on collaborating with anybody from there. And if that's one of you people that emailed, no offense. No offense. Hard to trust people that come out of there, but I do plan. I'm thinking Utah is going to be my first stop, and then Arizona. So please like, subscribe, share, turn on notifications, and that's it for tonight. Have a good night, guys. Sleep well, and I will see you tomorrow.